Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and welcome to the Karey Carbaugh podcast, episode number 71. Buenas noches, damas y caballeros, chicos y chicas, niños de todas edades, y bienvenidos a el Karey Carbaugh podcast, episodio número 71. Welcome. My name is Karey Carbaugh, and this is the Karey Carbaugh podcast. I'm a little late tonight, and I do apologize. I know I keep apologizing, but things keep getting in the way, and you know how I know that it's going to be a powerful podcast? When things keep happening to try to get me to not do this podcast tonight, and I was absolutely determined that we were going to do this. I know it's late for some of you on the East Coast, but have you ever tried to get online to do something in a timely fashion and all of a sudden all your apps want you to log in when you've just been in them recently and never logged out? Well, me too. And then some of your passwords it didn't seem to recognize. Has that ever happened to you? Me too. That's kind of where I was at tonight. And I was thinking something is trying to get me to not do this podcast, so it must be one that somebody needs to hear. It must be a powerful one. So I hope by the time I finish this, you'll agree. I hope you'll get value from this. If you would, let me know if you're catching this live or on the replay. I imagine a lot of people will be catching this on the replay. Drop that word live or replay or an L or an R in the comments. And let me know where you're dialing in from. It's always interesting for me to hear and see where people are coming in from, because this podcast is reaching way broader than I ever expected. I never thought we'd be doing 71 of these, but here we are. And I do think tonight's episode is going to be a good one for many people. This is going to be part 2 in the series of 3, which may actually end up being 4. I got an idea tonight that I want to play around with that came out of a discussion at our Young Life, Wildlife Middle School group. So there could be a part 4 bonus episode in this series, but for sure we're going to do 3. And this is number 2. Continuing in our discussion about addiction. And this came from one of our followers, Karen. Shout out to Karen. I appreciate the suggestion, and this gave me some food for a couple of really good podcasts, I think. Last week we talked a little bit about addiction, kind of a high-level overview of where we're going to go in these next couple of episodes. Tonight I wanted to first define addiction. And then I want to define obsession, because I think the two are very similar, but also very different. And so it could be that something that you're considering an addiction is really more of an obsession. And then we're going to go into 5 questions, which I think could be very useful for this discussion. I first heard these 5 questions posed when looking at something negative. And we may actually redo these 5 questions in that context. But one of my fellow podcasters shared these questions on her podcast a couple weeks ago. Shout out to Tennille. I always want to give credit where credit is due. And she had these 5 questions, and I had heard them in trainings that I've been in before. Never really thought of them, but it really kind of hit me that these can apply to an addiction. And also to figure out whether something is an addiction or an obsession. And we'll get into that as we get into the podcast here. But let's start out by looking at the difference between an addiction and an obsession. And if you'll permit me, for those of you who are new to these podcasts, I am a person with low vision, And so if I'm looking down at my phone here and not looking at the camera, it's because I'm reading off my phone. I've got some notes tonight that I want to be sure I cover specifically. And I'm actually going to use my phone to read these two definitions because it'll be quicker than me trying to read them. So if you'll allow me, we're going to use Siri's voice, which I'm sure you all are familiar with, to read these two definitions. Voiceover on. So first, we're going to look at the definition of an addiction.
No, gambling, gaming, shopping, despite, dependent on a substance. Addicted refers to being compulsively.
Okay, here we go.
No, addicted refers to being compulsively, physically, or psychologically dependent on a substance, drugs, alcohol, nicotine, or a behavior, gambling, gaming, shopping, despite negative consequences. It involves a loss of control and often manifests as intense cravings, habitual, or devoted behavior. Being obsessed means having an excessive, uncontrollable, or unhealthy preoccupation with the person, idea, or activity, where thoughts are constantly fixated on that subject. Text field, checklist. Unhealthy preoccupation with a loss of control and often manifests physically.
This actually read both of these. Let's do this again.
Addicted. Physically, or psychologically. Addicted refers to being compulsively dependent on a substance, drugs, alcohol, nicotine, or a behavior, gambling, gaming, shopping, despite negative consequences. It involves a loss of control and often manifests as intense cravings, habitual, or devoted behavior. Empty line.
Okay, so an addiction is a compulsive behavior.
Addicted refers to being compulsively dependent physically or psychologically.
Compulsively dependent physically or psychologically on a substance, or might be, we discussed last week, addictions to chocolates or sweets. So if you're addicted, you're compulsively
Screen dim. Addicted refers to being compulsively physically or psychologically
compulsively physically or psychologically dependent on them. So are you dependent on chocolates? Or is it more of an obsession? Whoops.
Screen dim.
Sorry about that. I have lights behind me and they... Okay, I guess we're just going to have a rough podcast tonight. My lights just fell off the laptop. They were weighting it down and pulling it back, which is why the laptop flipped. But I guess we're going to have a rough podcast tonight. So that must mean that somebody needs to hear this, and this is one that is trying to knock me off my game tonight. But we are just going to persist, and we're going to make this work tonight.
10:36 p.m.
In spite of everything that's happening here.
10:36 p.m. Alert.
So,
selected voiceover.
Is your addiction to chocolate something that you are physically, psychologically, or emotionally dependent on? Or is it more of an obsession? And let's look at the definition of an obsession.
Voiceover on. No. Being obsessed means having an excessive, uncontrollable, or unhealthy preoccupation with a person, idea, or activity, where thoughts are constantly fixated on that subject.
So,
thoughts of that subject.
Are you maybe fixated on it? Maybe not physically, psychologically, or emotionally dependent, but you're fixated on it. And some of the examples that Karen suggested in her post, in her comment to me a few weeks ago, were that she finds herself addicted to, and I don't remember all of the things, but chocolates for a period of time. And then maybe her addiction shifts to a specific, like a Snickers bar, for a period of time. And then it might shift to ice cream. And most of hers that she mentioned had to do with foods. And so I would suggest the question, are you addicted or are you more obsessed? Are you psychologically, emotionally, or physically dependent on the chocolates? Or are you simply obsessed with them? And then after a period of time, you become obsessed with something else. A different form of chocolate or a different form of food. that was what I wanted to suggest be the difference between
Enter passcode.
obsessed and addicted.
Accessibility shortcuts.
But now let's look at our 5
Selected.
questions
Voiceover.
here.
Voiceover off.
And I'm turning my voiceover off for just a second. I hope you'll bear with me as my phone chitter chatters while I turn it on and off. 5 questions. Actually, I'm going to start with the version that Tennille used on her podcast, and then we'll look at the 5 questions as they were suggested in the article that they came from. And I will post a link to the article if you want to dig into this a little bit more yourself. I'll post that in the comments and I'll pin it so that it stays at the top. But first of all, let's take a look at, is it true? Is it true that you're addicted to chocolate? Is it true that you're addicted to nicotine or drugs? Let me preface all of this by saying that this is not intended to be a professional counseling session. If it is an addiction that you are truly dependent on, especially if it's an illegal substance, I do encourage you to seek some professional help and not to rely on the material from this podcast. But for those of us who have, from time to time, addictions on less serious things, then I think some of these suggestions may help and may not rise to the level of needing professional help. So the first question, is it true that you're addicted or obsessed with whatever it is? Fill in the blank yourself. Then I would ask you, is it absolutely true? No other options. So it's absolutely true that you're addicted to chocolate. I'm just going to stick with that one example. You can fill in the blank. Is it absolutely true that there is no other option other than you're addicted? Many times I would suggest maybe not. And that's maybe where it becomes more of an obsession. But even with regard to the obsession, is it true that you're obsessed with it? That you're always thinking about it? Is it absolutely true and there's no other option but to think about whatever it is that you're obsessed with? So let's look at the third question. So again, number one is it true? Number 2, is it absolutely true for you? Number 3, how does it make you feel? So when you are obsessed or addicted to chocolates, when you're doing that addiction or doing a drug, how does it make you feel? If you're addicted to nicotine, smoking, how does that make you feel? Next question. How do I act when I feel this way? So if you're obsessed with nicotine or you're addicted to nicotine, again, how do I act when I feel this way? Maybe it makes you happy. Maybe it makes you relaxed. If it's alcohol, maybe it relaxes you. Okay? What is the outcome? So, sorry, there's one before that. How do I act when I feel this way? How do I act when I feel this way? So if it's, I'm going to shift a little bit here and use nicotine or alcohol. If it makes you relaxed, how do you act when you're relaxed? And again, if it's a serious addiction, you may need professional help for this. This is intended more for people who need a little bit of help with a minor addiction that really is perhaps more of an obsession. So, how do you feel? How does it make you feel? And how do you act when you feel that way? Next question. What is the outcome? So if it's alcohol, for example, perhaps it makes you relaxed and you act and feel good when you're relaxed, but the outcome might be the hangover the next day. It's all part of it. Or if it's chocolates, perhaps you feel good when you're eating the chocolates. It makes you happy and you act happy or relaxed, but maybe then the outcome, if you eat too much, is that you become sick. So what is the outcome? Last question here. Now flip it. Flip the item. How do you feel? Or first of all, ask all these questions with it flipped. Is it true that you're not addicted or not obsessed with chocolates? Is it absolutely true for you that you're not addicted or not obsessed with chocolates? My phone keeps timing out here. So is it true? Is it absolutely true that there's no other option than not being addicted? Next, how does it make you feel when you're not addicted or obsessed? And how do you act when you feel that way? Next, what is the outcome? So what is the outcome if you're not addicted to chocolates? Maybe the outcome is that you're more stressed. Maybe the outcome is that you're not sick, like you might be if you eat too many chocolates. So what is the outcome? Now we're going to take a slightly different approach, looking at the actual, those were the questions that Tennille posed, which I've heard done this way, but I want to take a look because some of the questions in the original article are slightly different. The first two are the same. Is it true? And can you absolutely know that it's true? So is it true that you're addicted, and can you absolutely know that it's true you're addicted to whatever it is for you? Number 3, how do you react when it happens? When you believe that thought, or you believe that you're addicted or obsessed with whatever it is for you. Again, how do you react? I'm sorry, I misread that the first time. How do you react? What happens when you believe that you're obsessed or addicted? How do you react, and what happens? Similar to the questions we discussed before, but a little different slant on it. Number 4, who would you be without that addiction? So if you weren't addicted to chocolates, who would you be? This is a little different twist on the questions we went through a minute ago. Who would you be if you weren't addicted or if you weren't obsessed? Think about that. Would you be a happier person? Maybe, maybe not. That's something you have to think about yourself. And then the last, oh, I thought there was one more. There's 4 questions, not 5. I thought there was 5. But yeah, who would you be if you were not addicted? And again, we're going to take a look at these questions in another episode relating to a negative thought. You can think on that yourself in the meantime, but I will cover that in another episode because that's how I originally heard these questions posed. When something tries to knock you off your game or is a negative thought that crosses your mind. And that's also a big thing for self-esteem, avoiding negative thoughts. But again, for tonight's episode, these are relating to thoughts of addiction versus obsession. So I hope you found this valuable. If you did, drop the word value in the comments and let me know that. If you can relate to any of this, drop the word relate. That would be very helpful. And smash that like button. Like if you do. Like if you like this episode specifically. It does help the algorithms to show this to more people. As we wrap this up, again, this is the second of at least 3 episodes on addiction. I have another approach that I want to take next week. I won't spoil it by giving you the punchline. Come back next week and we'll approach this from a different angle. And hopefully this will help. And then the 4th week, perhaps a bonus week, may address some of the other questions and concerns that were in Karen's original post. So, once again, this has been the Karey Carbaugh podcast. I so appreciate you joining me. If you would like to be added to my email list for some more in-depth discussions of some of these topics, please drop that word email in the comments and I will reach out and get your email address privately so that I can add you to my email list. And once again, I appreciate your support. I appreciate you tuning in, whether live, I know it's late for some people, or if you're catching this on the replay. Either way, I appreciate you. So until we meet again next time on the Karey Carbaugh podcast, or if I pop up in the meantime with a special episode, again, this has been the Karey Carbaugh podcast. Make it a great week. Be a blessing to those around you. And have a blessed day or blessed night. For now, goodbye for now.